What you see happening here is...
Just kidding.
This scene right here, this is the scene that you need to be paying attention to, because this is the one that tells you literally everything that you need to know about what is going on here. Because this scene is undeniable proof that we are not only being deceived by the evil forces of this town, but that everything that we have been doing is part of a plan that has been designed to destroy the people of this town. The first thing that has to be addressed here is that the Nightwalkers already knew about the townspeople's plan to try to kill one of the Nightwalkers by using the Voodoo totems. And we know this to be conclusively the case because of a very simple and undeniable fact. The Nightwalkers have never at any point in the entire show reacted like this when they were being shot with the bullets by the people of the town. And we also saw them specifically blocking off all the exits that Kenny was supposed to use after testing out the Voodoo totem. So it's very obvious that they already knew in advance everything about the people's plan long before it happened. This is important to understand because it makes it very clear that the reaction we saw from the milkman was actually a tactic of psychological warfare, i.e. the entity in control of the monsters wanted to give us hope that we had actually succeeded in finding a weapon capable of killing the Nightwalkers before immediately taking it away. In other words, this implies that Tabitha being lured by the supposed ghost of Jim Matthews threw Ethan to the cabins by the lake so that she could kill one of the giant doll monsters using the Voodoo totem effigies was always a part of the plan made by the entity in control of the monsters to give the townspeople false hope that they could ever win against this place, so that he could tear down that hope and replace it with an idea that will induce pure suffering in the minds of these people, i.e. that there is no way to win. The game's rigged. And we already knew that this was always going to be the case because of a very simple fact. The entity not only allowed us to find the Voodoo totem effigies, but he also allowed us to bring them back to the town of Fromville. If they were in any way whatsoever a threat to the Nightwalkers, he would have never allowed that to happen. Because may I remind you that this is the same entity that can crush houses like pancakes, induce telepathic visions in people's brains, and of course break people in their dreams. So if these totems could have ever even possibly been a threat, he would have taken out everybody at the settlement long before they ever made it back to the town. Like, even now, people still do not get it. That entire thing was staged. If he wanted the people in that cabin to die, he would have sent all three of the giant doll monsters to attack them at the same time. But he didn't, because he wants them to stay alive so that he can keep feeding off of them as they suffer endlessly. Everything that happened before this moment with Kenny was designed to give the people hope that the totems were going to work. But he already knew that they were going to fail. That was always the entire point. You can never truly know despair if you never had hope in the first place. That is the same reason why he allowed Fatima to control Smiley. And if you think this is a good thing... Oh man, like, think about this. If Fatima can control Smiley, do you know what that means? It means that Smiley himself can also control Fatima. In other words, Smiley is going to use the golem monster that is currently on the second floor of Colony House, which Fatima is creating, to kill the people living in that house. Fatima has literally said multiple times in the past few episodes that her connection with Smiley goes both ways. So he is also going to have the ability to control her as well. But what you really need to understand here is that what this tells us is that there is nothing, absolutely nothing these people are doing that is not a part of the plan made by the entity. Like, I want you to think about this. If they knew about their plan to attack the Nightwalkers with the Voodoo totems, it means that they already know about Boyd and Jade's plan to go down into those tunnels to recover the bones of those children that were supposedly sacrificed. Think about that. What does that tell you? Think. It tells you that it is a trap, and it was always a trap. They literally showed Jade in his acid trip that they are going to be waiting for him when he arrives in the tunnels, and that is when they are going to deal with him in the exact way that they always planned to deal with him. Like, we know for a fact that all of these versions of Jade made it to the point where they played the violin at the laboratory, remembered their past lives, and told the townspeople about it. Just like the Voodoo totems are nothing new for the Nightwalkers, the mission to go into the tunnels and try to gather the children's bones is also nothing new to the the entity, he actually wants them to do it. It was always a part of his plan. In fact, he was probably the one who created that fake quest in the first place. Just like he created the fake quest to save the children locked in the tower. Ooh, somebody save the children. It is a ploy. It is a sham. This entire thing is a scam. Like the 12-year-old Jade boy in blue who showed him the fake visions that gave Jade the idea to go into the tunnels is the entity who's in control of the monsters himself. There's a reason why none of these versions of Jade and Tabitha ever won the game, and they never will. It's because all of the quests that they did and they're doing right now are being given to them by the same being who wants them to suffer, the entity in control of the monsters. No one is going anywhere because no one here is doing anything that he does not want us to do. The entire thing has been rigged in favor of the evil forces of the town. And all of this, all of what we're talking about right now, all of it is just the tip of the spear for how badly we are being manipulated and toyed with by this place. Something that is going to become very obvious when you watch this next scene, which directly ties into what happened in this particular episode.
I'm not gonna kill you, boy.
You don't fucking break me.
That's what she said.
You don't fucking break me!
This scene is very relevant to what we saw happening with the monsters in more ways than you can possibly imagine, because it is very clear to us now as the viewers that the people of the town are living under a possibly constant state of surveillance under the authority of the entity in control of the monsters. Because very similar to how the Nightwalkers knew what Boyd said while he was in the forest, despite it being daytime and that there were no monsters nearby, or that they set up a trap in the road before Tabitha arrived in the ambulance, we also see that the Nightwalkers were aware of not only the fact that Kenny was supposed to run to one of those houses after stabbing one of the Nightwalkers with the totem, but that the milkman was specifically reacting in a way to make them believe that their plan had been successful, which we know for a fact, because they don't react in that way when they get shot by bullets. There's also the fact that Smiley was waiting the bus for Kenny. So just like we saw with Boyd and Kenny's mom being led into the barn for an ambush, Kenny was also led into the bus because Smiley was already there waiting for him. But what people seem to be missing here is that Boyd did not tell the man in yellow about the escape plan, which the Nightwalkers clearly knew about as they had blocked off the doors of the houses specifically because of it. Boyd only told the yellow man about them planning to kill one of the Nightwalkers with the voodoo totems, but the Nightwalkers still knew about the entire plan somehow. The reason why this distinction matters is that there's so many different hints in this episode in particular that the man in yellow is something completely different to whoever it is that actually created the Nightwalkers. The first thing here is that the Roger monster seemingly was not created from somebody's nightmare, unlike the giant dolls, and I presume is also the case for the officially named nightmare creatures, which we know very well as the Smiley type monsters. To me, this implies that whatever magic the man in yellow is using is incredibly different to the one that created the Nightwalkers, which would make sense if he was not the one that did that. Because think about this, we saw the milkman just completely tanking and shrugging off Kenny's attempt to stab him with the voodoo totem. But when you look at Roger, who was a monster created by the man in yellow, he died instantly after being stabbed by the totems. So the obvious takeaway here is that the magic that created the Roger monster, i.e. the one used by the man in yellow, is different than whatever the magic is that is powering the Nightwalkers, therefore suggesting that the man in yellow is not the creator of the Nightwalkers, because even when you think about it, the Roger monster itself was completely unaffected by the talismans, just like the man in yellow himself. There's also the fact that Roger was created from a fertilized chicken egg. Once again, something that is obviously very different from a nightmare. And at the same exact time where the man in yellow is controlling Roger is the same time when the Nightwalkers were attacking Kenny at the town. The giant dolls are really where it gets tricky, because there you are also immune to the talismans just like the man in yellow. And you've been led to believe that they were created from the nightmares of that random guy in Kid Tabitha's flashback. So I do wonder if the man in yellow was the one who created those giant dolls, and he is not the same being who created the Nightwalkers, who are in fact weak to the talismans. Because many people pointed out how Ellis seemed like he was actually doing damage to the giant dolls, despite just using, I think it was a block of wood to attack them or something like that, I don't know. And Roger obviously died much easier than the Nightwalkers as well. So perhaps the man in yellow's magic is somewhat weaker than the entities, which results in his creations not being as tough as the Nightwalkers, for example, who regularly tank bullets for breakfast and obviously would not be injured in any way if someone was trying to hit them with a random stick. There's also the mystery of who exactly tied a rope to the submerged giant dolls in that village that is located out by the lake, because we still have not been given an explanation for why they didn't just kill the giant dolls, despite the fact that based on what we've been told from Tabitha's recollection, the people who were living in those cabins at that time should have had the capability to kill those giant dolls. There's also the fact those giant dolls don't have fingers, so who sewed Roger's face in the first place with the buttons and all of that stuff? Who did that? There's no way they did that because they don't have fingers. You can also see the man in yellow seeming to be worried about the voodoo totem effigies, but we've clearly seen that they are absolute trash when facing off against the might of the Nightwalkers, which might be implying that he himself, the man in yellow, is vulnerable to the voodoo totem effigies. Even more hints that whoever created the Nightwalkers is different to the man in yellow. Hence why the talismans do not work on the man in yellow or his creations, while the voodoo totem effigies do not work on the Nightwalkers and therefore wouldn't work on the entity himself. I've also seen people saying that Roger was just revived and he wasn't actually a monster, and that could be a possibility, I don't know. But what we do know for a fact is that the writers definitely want us to see that there is a connection of some kind between the man in yellow and the old man who was trapped in that dungeon. So go watch this video right here to see how Boyd's encounter with the old man directly ties into what is happening with Victor's dad right now.